About 3 months ago, a friend of mine and brother named Don Barrier called me. He's a member of Dorida Lodge, and he wanted me to do a program. They're thinking about building a new lodge. So when he called me, I had in the back of my mind a program about sacred architecture, but I just hadn't had anybody kick me in the high gear to get it done. So I developed this program for them about sacred architecture and about some other stuff about them building a lodge. But in the last couple of weeks, I've extracted some of that and modified it, and so you're going to get the outcome tonight. And as I was preparing for this program, I was reading an article on the laudable pursuit by Brother Bob Davis, who is a prolific Masonic author, a wonderful speaker. I've heard him speak. And the article I read, the last paragraph really resonated with what I was trying to say. So I'm going to start out by reading that article. He says, "You see, the choice always controls the chooser. To be exemplary men or an exemplary organization, we have to be exceptional in our awareness of who we are, what we are here to be doing, what we know, and how we practice what we know. We have to have the courage to be different from the rest of the crowd, nobler in our expectations, and more refined in our state of mind, because that's just the way Masonry is." So as we go through the program tonight, I want us to be thinking about two questions. We've all heard this question before. Whence came you, and what come you here to do? Or in other words, where do we come from as Masons, and where are we going as Masons? What are we here to be doing as Masons? So to start out with, I want to talk with you about our ancient brethren, our ancient operative brothers. So to set the stage, the mid-5th century, Rome is in a death spiral. They're on the way out. What was once the great light of Europe, at least in architecture, arguably, is on their way out. And what this does is ushers in what we call the Dark Ages, which was not a good time to live. If you lived in the Dark Ages, there's a good chance, number one, that half of your children would die before they reached adolescence. If your children lived, there's a good chance that you would die before they reached adolescence. There was plenty of grief and sorrow and mainly ignorance going around in this time. It was not a good time to live. However, there were rays of light in the darkness, as there always is. This is the Cathedral Chartres in Chartres, France, which was built by our ancient operative brothers. This cathedral was built in 1145 originally in a Romanesque design. You see the tower on the left is from the original building. The building burnt in June 10th, 1194, and it was rebuilt. Not right away, but it was rebuilt in a Gothic design. The tower on the right is a new Gothic tower. Unbelievable architecture. This is from the inside looking at the stained glass windows. You see the columns on the right and the left with the Vesca Pisces archways, which is two overlap circles with the same radius. Another shot from the inside. I got a little video we can watch later. I'm not going to do it right now, but here's another cathedral, Cathedral Reims in France. Again, you see the three entrances. Again, we see the Vesca Pisces. The building was laid out specifically by the height to width by a specific ratio that we're going to talk about here shortly. Again, we see the inside. Again, you see the columns, the Vesca Pisces. You see this in all the medieval architecture. Another shot at the entrance, intricate carvings. Just unbelievable architecture. You guys throw something at me if you can't see. Roslin Chapel, Scotland, built 1456 by William Sinclair. If you watch the History Channel or read the Da Vinci Code, you know that there's lots of mystery and conspiracy theories that surround this building, none of which we will solve tonight. However, there's no denying the unbelievable architecture that's in this building. Many of these pictures are courtesy of one of our brothers who has been there. This is a carving of what they call the Green Man, which you'll find in civilizations throughout history. It basically symbolizes a rebirth, a new beginning, or a springtime, if you will. The Apprentice Pillar, we've all heard of that. It was rumored that William Sinclair had a Templar lineage, and that's where some of these symbols came from. Whether he did or didn't, I don't know, but there's obviously some Masonic connections to this chapel. Another shot at the ceiling. I know some of you brothers probably can't see that very well, but it's a very intricate work. I mean, I wouldn't even know how to begin to do something like this. So how these brothers do this? All this time, these hundreds of years, civilization's been in the Dark Ages. But yet, there were these knowers who knew geometry and symmetry and how to build these buildings that still inspire us today. Look in our G lecture, which is one of the most beautiful lectures I think we have. The first chapter, or verse you might say, reads, "Geometry, the first and noblest of sciences, is the basis on which the superstructure of masonry is erected. By geometry, we curiously trace nature through her various windings to her most concealed recesses. By it, we may discover the power, the wisdom, and the goodness of the grand artificer of the universe, and view with delight the proportions which connect this vast machine." So, these ancient operative brothers knew that the universe was created through geometry, through symmetry. They saw that, and they tried to replicate that in the buildings that they built. And the result was astonishing. We still stand in awe of their work today. One way they did that was through what's called the golden ratio. Some of you may have heard of that. Leonardo Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence, discovered, he was born in 1175. It's not something he invented, but he discovered it and publicized it, wrote about it. Basically what it is, you start out with 0 and a 1. You add them together, you get 1. You add 1 and 1 together, you get 2. 1 and 2 together, you get 3, and so on and so on. And if you take one of these numbers and divide it by the preceding number, you get a ratio that is close to 1.618, or the golden ratio. This number is very important to our ancient brethren, these architects. Matter of fact, this very room we're in, from the back of the preparation room, which is about 5 feet beyond that door, to this wall, this rectangle would be considered a golden rectangle. It is in the ratio of 1.618, close to it. Now, did the guys that built this building do that on purpose? Probably not. They probably did it because it was pleasing to the eye. That's what this is about. It's pleasing to the eye. It comes natural to us when things are built with this ratio. This is a Fibonacci sequence in squares. You see at the not the center, but just to the right, you got the 2 single squares. Above it, you've got a 2 square. To the right, a 3 square, then a 5 square, a 8 square, and a 13 square. This is all in the Fibonacci sequence. What happens when you connect those? The golden spiral. We see this throughout nature. You see it in a pine cone. Pick up any pine cone, look at the bottom of it, it grows in a spiral that matches the golden ratio. Cauliflower, these are just a few. This is barely scratching the tip of the iceberg, brothers, because we don't have all. This is a nautilus shell. exact model of the golden spiral. Hurricane. Again, we see the spiral. Galaxies. The Milky Way galaxy is a spiral galaxy, and most galaxies out there are spiral galaxies in this shape. In 1932, Albert Einstein wrote his credo, and I'm going to read the last paragraph of that. The most beautiful and deepest experience a man can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion as well as all serious endeavors in art and science. He who never had the experience seems to me, if not dead, then at least blind. To sense that behind anything that can be experienced, there is something that our minds cannot grasp, whose beauty and sublimity reaches us only indirectly. This is religiousness. In this sense, I am religious. To me, it suffices to wonder at these secrets and to attempt humbly to grasp with my mind a mere image of the lofty structure of all there is. So that's what these brothers did, these ancient operative brothers. They built these buildings, and they still inspire us today to grasp with our mind the mere image of the lofty structure of all there is, or the mere image of the divine. And this is something that we have lost in our modern day architecture. I dare say that we won't be, civilization in 800 years will not be awestruck at the buildings that we are designing and building today, if they're even standing in 800 years. So that was a look at our ancient brethren. How about where are we going? Well, to look at that, I want to take another look back, not quite as far. I want to look back to what I call the golden era of Masonic architecture, from the late 1800s up into 1930, the Great Depression. This is Freemasons' Hall in London, England. There's been a Masonic building on this site since 1775. This particular building was built in 1927. It has 21 lodge rooms, a museum, and a library. This is one of the main lodge rooms. Another lodge room. This is Mother Kilwing Lodge in Scotland. Not a magnificent looking building from the exterior, but still plenty of character. This particular building was built in 1893. Scottish Freemasons say there has been a Masonic building on this site since the 1500s. So, oops. This is a foyer looking in. Got a bust of Robert Burns there. Wonderful, beautiful old lodge room. And the pub. The pub below or above the lodge?
Above.
The pub's above the lodge. Asheville Masonic Temple. If you brothers have never been here, I encourage you to go. This is a wonderful building. It has recently been restored in the last, 5 to 10 years. But it is well worth a day trip to Asheville to see this building. Beautiful. This is a lodge room. You see the barrel vaulted ceiling, the false beams, the mosaic pavement. Wonderful building. This is looking at the south. You see the beautiful hardwood floors that have been restored. Take a look at the altar and the blazing star. This is a foyer coming in. Beautiful. You go up the stairs to the lodge, or you come through here to go to the dining hall. Beautiful building. Again, built in the 1920s. Actually, it was built between 1913 and 1915. Shot from the outside. The Scottish Rite, York Rite room. Greensboro Masonic Temple. Many of us know this building well. Built in the same era. York Rite room, beautiful architecture. Scottish Rite room, Egyptian motif. Just to stand in this room and look at the detail is impressive, brothers. Every time I go in here, it never fails to astonish me at the architecture. Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. I'm going here in a few days. Can't wait. This building is, another building is built in the late 1800s, same time frame. grand dining hall, mosaic pavement floor, mosaic tile floor, wonderful architecture. Lodge rooms, grand staircase. So, why these brothers in the 1920s, why did they build these buildings, these grand buildings? Well, in my opinion, for one thing, masonry was special to them. Masonry meant something to these brothers. Masonry was special to them, and they projected that in the buildings that they built. And guess what? By 1930, 12% of the adult male population in the United States were Masons. 12%. Anybody want to take a guess at the adult male population today that are Masons? 1.3%. Roughly 1.3% of the adult male population today are Masons. Now, am I saying these buildings are the reason for that? No, but I think they had a lot to do with it. This is the most public display we have, brothers. When somebody rides by a lodge building, what do they see? Are they in awe and want to know what goes on in that building? Or do they even notice it's there? So when the Great Depression hit, our mindset changed. We didn't have the money to do this type of thing. But brothers, I think this is our time. What is the biggest difference between us and them now? Between the brothers in the 20s and us? They still had wives, they still had jobs, they still had problems, they still had bills. The biggest difference we have is we have distractions. We have the internet. We have smartphones, computers. I've got all of them. I know how. I'm more distracted than anybody. All these things that save us time are distractions that actually steal time from us. So what those brothers understood that we don't is that we need this place. We need this sanctum sanctorum away from those distractions. If only for a couple hours a week, a few hours a month, we need this place. And the men out there that are not Masons need it as well. They just don't realize that we're here and they can get that here. So brothers, I would submit to you that just like our ancient operative brothers who helped usher Europe out of the Dark Ages by shining rays of light, just like they did, I submit to you that this is our time.
Amen.
This is our time to help our civilization emerge from the dark ages of materialism. We are not in the dark ages as they were in the early days, but we are in our own type of dark ages. We live in a materialistic world. Back in the 1200s, when they were building these magnificent buildings, where did they build them? They built them at the center of the town. They were the largest building in that town. What do we do today? What type of buildings are in the center of our towns today? Well, Charlotte, you got the Bank of America building, right? New York City, we had the World Trade Center. Chicago, the Sears Tower. These are financial institutions. We're a materialistic society. So, masonry needs to be the light to help our civilization find its way out of the darkness, just like our operative brothers did 1,000 years ago. Thank you, brothers.